What's up, everybody? Welcome back into an episode of The Lawyer You Know. And today we get to hear from the head of the Massachusetts State Police about what he thinks about these investigations in Karen Reed, Sandra Birchmore, etc. What he thinks about the people that they are supposed to protect. What is the purpose of MSP and of law enforcement in this state? Is he just saying all the right words, or is this going to be something that is truth put into action? And if it is, how will this affect Karen Reed's 1983 lawsuit? Because I think it is coming, and I think this will be a big part about it, but there are some rules of evidence that don't allow you to use what we call post-remedial measures, which is a lot of what he's talking about. If they are put into place, will it even actually help her case? We're going to talk about that, and we're going to answer all of your questions now. All right, so we did bump the time up a little bit here. And the reason for that is some people emailed in and said the Miles King hearing is starting at 2 o'clock. I want to watch that later. I'm not going to be able to watch it live. But I was able to move this video up a little bit so we could at least get some of my thoughts prior to that hearing happening, prior to actually Proctor or Lally or anybody actually taking the stand, because I think it's important to get my thoughts about this interview prior to hearing, especially what Michael Proctor talks about, because a lot of what this head of the Massachusetts State Police talks about could affect Proctor. And Proctor probably listened to this. I would believe Proctor's lawyer certainly listened to this, because all of this is really important when it comes to Proctor testifying in Miles King's case, to Proctor testifying in his own case, trying to get his job back, what this officer thinks about Proctor and his ability to get his job back. All of that is really important. And I want to try and do it in sequence here, right? And in order. So instead of having the King hearing first and then us listening to this interview came first. So I want to break this down before we break down the Miles King hearing, which I'll probably do tomorrow. So let's take a listen now to the hearing, or to the interview.
I just want to start with you starting in this job. It was, I believe, September 2024 that it was announced that you were going to start here.
Yep.
And there was a lot of stress put on the fact that you were coming from the outside. There's a search outside of Massachusetts for someone external to come in and lead state police. And this was in a time that was difficult for state police, coming off of an overtime scandal. First Karen Reed trial had just ended, among other issues.
Yeah, by the way, throughout this, you may have heard some things about the overtime scandal and somebody dying during their police training. We're going to hear about that here. It's a lot more than the cases that we've been following. It's so bad, and it's so much more than you could ever imagine. But the first thing she asked him about, what is it like being an outsider? What did you think about being an outsider? Why is that such a big deal in Massachusetts? Is it just Massachusetts, or is it everywhere? Because they seem to want to talk about it a lot every chance they get. And I can't help but flash back to the opening statements and the arguments at trial for Karen Reed. She was an outsider. All these other people that, we're going to point the finger at as wrongdoing or whatever as part of our defense theory, they're insiders. She's an outsider. First thing in this interview he's asked about is being an outsider.
Why did you take this job?
Well, I am an outsider from another state police agency. That said, I grew up in and around Massachusetts. I grew up around members of the Massachusetts State Police. And then as a state trooper from another state, I worked my entire career, and many times I got to work alongside the Massachusetts State Police and the women and men of the Massachusetts State Police in an operational capacity. And through all those experiences, I developed a profound respect for the Massachusetts State Police, for the institution of the Massachusetts State Police, and for what it represents. And I always, growing up in this area and through my professional career, viewed the Massachusetts State Police as a model nationally. And over time, and overseeing what was occurring and the shortfalls and the scandals that had happened, that was not the Massachusetts State Police. That was not representative of the Massachusetts State Police that I had gotten to know personally over the years. And once there was an announcement that there was a national search that was being done, I had retired at this point from law enforcement. I had moved on and from public service. But in that moment, I felt that if the governor felt that she was going to choose somebody from the outside, and if that person was to be me, I felt that it was a call to service, a call to support the institution of the Massachusetts State Police and to support the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That if that was in fact an opportunity that was afforded to me, that I would put my hand up and say, I will do everything in my power and in my ability to come and be a part of the Massachusetts State Police. But it's driven and based on two key factors. One.
So what do you guys think about this? What do you think about his intro? What do you think about why he wanted this job? He was retired. He was done. He was only going to come back in if he could do what he believed to be what the purpose of the Massachusetts State Police and what he thought of as the Massachusetts State Police. What do you think about when you hear him say that? What is your initial reaction, your gut reaction?
It's my belief in the Massachusetts State Police, which I believe that the Commonwealth has and shares, which is why we have this moment that's resonating so loudly. This belief in the Massachusetts State Police and the excellence that it should represent, and the slippage that has occurred. And that resonates with the community.
The slippage that has occurred. And I'm going to be nitpicky throughout this, and some of the words that he says are nitpicky because, again, if this is going to be used in the 1983 action, which is the civil lawsuit that Karen Reed, I think, will file against law enforcement and potentially the prosecutors here in Norfolk County, including Massachusetts State Police officers, I absolutely think that is coming. The more that comes out, the more confident I get that that lawsuit will eventually come, probably spearheaded by Alan Jackson, who's joining her civil defense team. And you better believe it's probably going to be bombastic. But when he says things like there was slippage, he is going to make multiple admissions in this interview that I would highlight, and I would absolutely depose this guy because it's not like he's brand new, like he just started yesterday. It was post-trial 1, pre-trial 2. So he was kind of in the mix, okay, for some of the things that were happening. But slippage, at least he's starting to admit some chinks in the armor here.
Equally as it resonates with me. So that's why I'm here. It's my belief in the Mass State Police, and it's my belief in and also the fact that we can address this moment, that we have to address this moment.
So you've used terms like slip.
That we need to address this moment. We have to address this moment. We have to. Now, how do we address it?
Slippage, scandal. I'm thinking big picture right now. You've worked in other state police agencies. Are these issues special to Massachusetts State Police or not?
There are issues that are unique to any agency.
Okay.
I don't think that the Massachusetts State Police is unique in this regard. I think that underlying these issues is the fact that as a large organization and a human organization, there are human beings behind what we do.
Right.
We have an institution, but there are going to be issues. But what I do find that I can bring to this moment that is a bit unique is a focus and a laser focus on improving our management structures, the managerial internal controls that the Massachusetts State Police has to ensure.
So what does he think he is specifically qualified for and uniquely qualified? It reminds me of Taken, right? I have a set of specific skills. His specific skill is managerial tactics, management, how we manage each other. And that to me is so incredibly important. And once again, that would be an entire subject matter of my jurisdiction. What do you mean by that? How do you fix managerial problems? What managerial problems did you see in the structure of Massachusetts State Police? What would you change? What did you change? We'll talk about whether you can use some of that later. But that's the first line of defense against bad cops is their superior officer, the chain of command, the checks and balances within law enforcement. They're supposed to protect and serve. So when their subordinates don't, you correct them. You teach them so that when they become supervisors, they do the same thing and it's the trickle-down effect. They're human beings. They're not going to be perfect. They may do something wrong. But the management tactics, the way they manage each other, and that brings you straight back to the text message chains where Proctor had no problem texting his superior officers the disgusting things that he did. And they got thumbs up and they all, had the, we're all buddies, we're all cool, let's all do this together talk. That's where it should have been nipped in the bud right there. And things may have been different. I don't know, but they may have been different. And that's what he is uniquely qualified to do. And one of the reasons they brought him on specifically was to change that management structure.
Sure that we have accountability across the board. And I think that if I was to drill down in one specific area that I believe that I can support the Massachusetts State Police on, it is that. It's to support this department through exceptional management practices, exceptional internal controls so that our troopers.
And I would say, well, how would you describe the management tactics and control that were there prior? Were they exceptional, like you say you want to implement now? Let's take a look at what Yuri Buchanan said. Let's take a look at what Tully said. Let's take a look at what all these supervisors said. It was all bad.
So getting the support that they need to number one, do their job. But number two, there's management, there's oversight, there's accountability. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we are accountable.
Management, oversight, accountability. Sections in a deposition outline, right? That's what we need. Accountability. And if this is just lip service, if he's talking like, yeah, we need accountability as like an amorphous object, it's like, no, how about accountability right now for what you guys did and for what happened? How about accountability for that? That's what real accountability means. Accountability is not just talking about how we're going to hold each other accountable in the future. It's also holding ourselves accountable to what has already happened.
To the public. And so our job is to ensure that we ultimately, at the end of the day, we are accountable to the public.
And they are accountable to the public. That brings in the expenses and the costs that were paid for things. That brings in the civil rights that each of the members of the public have. The people that still live under their power and control and law enforcement, that's who you are accountable to. And this 1983 action fights for exactly that. He is going to have the opportunity. I'll just tell you right now, because I know a lot of people are saying this is just lip service. He is going to have the opportunity to put his money where his mouth is. When this 1983 action comes, it's not an if anymore in my mind, at least. It's a when this 1983 action comes. He is going to have the opportunity to do the right thing. So are a lot of other politicians and leaders in the area, because they've got their fingers on potentially the purse strings, and a major settlement and an announcement and some remedial measures put into place, meaning fix the problems of the past. That to me is how you can show this is not just lip service. That is being accountable to the public. That is doing the right thing, even when it's really hard.
And so our job is to ensure that we are focused on building out these internal controls. And then equally as important, being transparent with the community so that
to me, that sounds like those internal controls don't exist. So you need to build them out. They didn't even have the internal controls you say they need. And then being transparent, because they're not right now, right? There's not a big argument about the fact that they're really not transparent. And this all, again, makes me think, what kind of answers is Proctor going to give on the stand, if any? How is Proctor going to act on the stand? How different is it going to be from what this guy is pushing right now, which I hope is true. I hope what he's saying is true. And I'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
Communities hear what we're doing, have a say in what we're doing. And then ultimately, the goal here is to restore some degree of public confidence so that there's a sense of confidence that the state police, we are not going to be perfect. We know agency, I know, is perfect. We're a human agency. The real challenge we have is to ensure that when we're not perfect, when we fall short of that expectation, that number one, we see it. Number two, we have the right mechanisms in place. And that's where we're focused on right now.
So he's focused on reinstilling public confidence in the Massachusetts State Police. Do you think that's possible? I don't know if that's possible, but I think that is something to strive for. And the way you can do this, you build up a lot of goodwill. You can still screw up, but people will give you the benefit of the doubt. They'll let you change. Now, today's nation seems harder than ever, but I understand what he's saying there. And I agree. You have to, as law enforcement, build public confidence. They have less than none of it right now. People assume the worst. It's not even like a baseline or maybe you're not going to do a job at all. They assume the worst at this point.
You kind of walked me right into this, which is the unique part about your position, I think, is that you answer to the people of Massachusetts and also to the thousands of state troopers, right? You're in that position kind of between what at times can be competing concerns. How do you deal with that?
Well, you look for common ground. You start with saying, where do we all agree? Mm-hmm. And what I have found is that area of where we agree on is huge. That's a very large area.
I disagree. I tend to disagree that the people of Massachusetts and the troopers agree on a large aspect of things right now, as we sit here. Now they can and they should, and I hope they do eventually. And I hope he works for that. But I tend to think generally it would be negative at this point.
I believe that is the majority, that area, meaning what I mean by that is we all agree that the Massachusetts State Police needs to be held accountable. The public agrees with that, and our troopers, I can assure you, agree with that. We all agree that troopers in our investigations and our troopers on patrol, our technical assets, our tactical folks, our air wing, we need to be operating at the highest stage. We are the Massachusetts State Police, and there's an expectation of that, and the Commonwealth is depending on that. We all agree on that. So for me, what my takeaway right now is we agree on so much. Okay. And there's certainly areas where we haven't aligned with an expectation, and we need to fix that. But the troopers understand this moment. The troopers agree.
Another admission. There are areas where we have not aligned with expectations.
In my experience, from what I have found, with the majority of the concerns that are out there, and the troopers are very committed.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about staffing. Where are you at currently, and is it in line with your goals?
So currently we have just over 2,400 sworn members of the department. We have just over 650 non-sworn members of the department. We have a class in right now. We have the 91st Academy class in, which is in there just over midway past their training right now. And then we have another class in, the 92nd class, which has started 13 weeks after the 91st. So as I sit here today, we have 2 classes running simultaneously at the Academy. So we have I would say that the staffing levels right now for the Mass State Police are healthy. I'm confident right now that we can respond to and execute their duties and responsibilities. That said, we are facing a large number of our troopers who are senior that have over 25 plus years. I expect that we'll see healthy retirements as we would normally expect. It is critical that we maintain.
So he mentioned healthy retirements. He is going to allude to something later as well that I tried to remember back and saying, like, healthy retirements. Is that what he means? Because we've seen a lot of people being rehomed and we've seen a lot of retirements. Is he forcing people out? That's a question I have. Words mean nothing without immediate action. Well, he is going to take credit for Proctor's termination and multiple other people being rehomed or relocated. I don't know if you guys attribute all that to him, but he's going to take credit for that in this interview. And he said we have to assume people are going to retire. So I wonder, is he pushing or encouraging certain law enforcement officers to retire?
A healthy pipeline, because we have some big challenges ahead. We have the FIFA 2026 next year, which is going to put a strain across the Commonwealth, but in a very good way. It's going to be an opportunity to show the world what the Commonwealth has to offer, and the state police look forward to being a part of that and to providing the appropriate security. But again, to do that, we need to make sure that we have enough troopers to do our job. So we're okay right now, but as I would absolutely put hiring and staffing as one of my top priorities that I absolutely focus on maintaining.
Okay, I wanted to just go over some, because I've seen some recruiting posts on social media from state police.
Sure.
All right. So she's about to get into some recruiting posts where the Massachusetts State Police is absolutely getting roasted by the comments. And I give her credit for asking these because it's got to be a little bit awkward, but I also give him credit for sitting there and answering these questions. And this leaves the opportunity open. Now he's willing to do interviews like this. What is he willing to do when Karen Reed and her team wants to meet, or people representing Sandra Birchmore's estate want to meet and talk about what exactly happened here? You guys are in the wrong. Or another case he's going to bring up of someone who died in training. Lawsuits are coming if they haven't already come in all these cases. What is he going to do? Is he doing all this to try and pacify and minimize risk? Or is he doing this saying, we're going to be open, we're going to be transparent. We know we're about to get hit with a bunch of lawsuits. We're going to deal with those and we're going to clean it up and move on. It better be the latter. They should admit their wrongdoing. They should pay the money in all these lawsuits, and then they should clean it up and move on. Anything short of that, to me, is just not going to work. So before we get to these comments, we're going to pause real quick for an ad of something really cool that I never knew about until I tried it. And now I was actually surprised how much I liked it. Me and John talked about whether or not I'd like it, and I was actually surprised. You guys know I'm all go all the time. So I'm obsessed with finding new, healthy ways to stay focused and energized without adding more coffee into my life. That's where today's sponsor, Mudwater, comes in. Mudwater is made with organic cacao, masala chai, and functional mushrooms. It contains a fraction of the caffeine of coffee, just 35 milligrams versus 90 to 100 milligrams, and is formulated to support energy, focus, and immunity without jitters, crashes, or sleep issues. It's also zero sugar, USDA organic, and Whole30 approved. Mudwater can really help take care of the energy I need when I worry about drinking too much coffee. And it's got a really cool spicy chai, hot chocolate taste, all with zero sugar. I'm also pumped to try my first matcha with Mudwater because I love a good variety when it comes to boosting my energy and focus without the crash and jitters. And with my link, you can get the Mudwater starter pack as well as a free frother, a really great value, and now $20 off.
Do you want to become a state trooper? Here's how you do it.
Yep.
And as I'm sure you are well aware, the responses to those are not always glowing.
Yep.
So I've looked at some of them. I just want to read you a few of them and ask you about it.
Sure.
So, a post from state police saying, do you want to become a state trooper? Here's how. Some of the comments. First, fire those that put us at risk. You know who they are. Once again, you cannot recoup public trust while still maintaining Officer Don O'Keefe got the investigation he deserved. Own it. Integrity. How's that Sandra Birchmore case holding up for you guys and your integrity? I can't believe state police have to recruit. It used to be one of the best jobs in the Commonwealth. Now it's a punchline. Enrique Delgado signed up to be a state trooper and ended up dead during a training exercise. No sane person would work for the stateys now because Proctor ruined them. I'm sure you see.
I mean, those are as brutal as you can possibly have in an interview. right? Fire those people. Nobody wants to work for the Stadies. Proctor ruined it. What about this person and that person? Nobody wants to work for you guys. You guys are a joke. You're the worst. That's basically what she just read in the comments.
These comments. Are your recruiting efforts hindered? And why do you think that is?
I think that anytime we see an erosion of public trust, anytime a police department has an incident that calls into question the integrity of the institution or the individual troopers, absolutely there is an impact on recruiting. I think that, and we're seeing that here. That said, I also know very proudly that we have over 2,400 troopers that are out there doing the job and doing it very well every day. And I think that we, as the Massachusetts State Police, need to continue to ensure that we will understand, we will accept the impediments to recruiting, whether it's specific issues that we have regarding performance of individual troopers or something more systemic that there's accusations are. But my response to that is engage with us, talk to us. We, through these messages and through our recruiting campaign, we are formally opening that door to say, learn about us.
Engage with us for recruitment. We are opening that door. So here's what I'll say. People have been asking me a lot from Massachusetts, what can I do? We talk about going to your elected officials. Well, guess what? He is opening the door to engage with you. And I think it would be cool if he went on maybe some local podcasts and local YouTube shows to answer their questions, to hear from you, the audience, the people that live there whose lives are actually affected. Go talk to them. I know they would all love to have him on. They'd have hard-hitting questions. I would hope they would be respectful and genuine in their questions and open to learning and engaging with him while still asking the tough questions and not just taking whatever he says and running with it. But that would be amazing if he would actually do what he's saying here and engage with the public that he is supposed to protect. Because not very many people in his position would do that, but not very many people are picking up as big of a mess as he is. How great would it be? I hope people do reach out to him. I hope people local to Massachusetts and Canton and Norfolk, I hope they reach out to him, take him up on his offer because he just said it. Something different we're doing here is we're opening the door to engagement. Please let that happen. Tiff, Peter, where can I send you the civil case filings? LawyerYouKnow@gmail.com. LawyerYouKnow@gmail.com. Michelle said, media tours only go so far. I get it. But if he goes on all these channels and he does say it publicly, he's going to be held to that. He's going to be held to it with the lawsuits that are coming. He's going to hear his own words again. There's nothing like a deposition where a lawyer brings out a transcript of your own words.
Challenge us. And I expect hard conversation. I expect, and that's part of this job as a very public facing, and we are accountable to the public. And when citizens have commentary to respond to us, absolutely, we don't shy away from it. That's part of this business. But I would also say, and challenge the Commonwealth to say, take the extra step and learn about us. We have formally, one change that you have seen through our Excellence Initiative and through our community outreach efforts is we have formally opened up communications. We are doing through the very post that you just referred to. We're opening up that door to say, come learn about us. If you're going to make a decision to pursue a career in law enforcement and the Massachusetts State Police, that's obviously a huge decision, but be informed. And we will accept and we will own and we will talk through the issues and the challenges, but we also want to talk about there's a lot of good to this job. And I still 100.
So then there's a bit of a qualifier there. If you want to become an officer, this should be open to all the people that are officers, are interested in officers, and are the people the officers protect.
100% believe that the Massachusetts State Police is an exceptional place to work. And frankly, I wouldn't have taken this job if I didn't believe that.
We have to talk about the investigation into the death of John O'Keefe and the subsequent Karen Reed trial.
Absolutely.
You started this job at an interesting time, right after the first trial ended, and then you were a colonel while the second trial went on. Of course, the #1 state trooper whose name has been associated with this has been Michael Proctor. I know that all of the behavior that he was terminated over happened before your time here. I'm just curious if you can reflect on that, on all of it, frankly, on the text messages and his handling of that investigation and how it reflects on state police.
Yeah, I think formally that the actions I've taken since I've been the colonel speak for themselves as far as I ultimately am responsible for making the final decision to terminate Trooper Proctor.
So what do you think about that? Give us your analysis. What do you think about the John O'Keefe case, the Proctor, the text? The decision started and stopped with me to terminate Proctor. Okay. So that's a step that he believes he is justified and correct in making, and that should build some public trust. What do you think?
That's a decision that's got my name on it, and I stand behind that decision. But I think that when you understand and you look through the particular facts and circumstances regarding that decision, we have to look at it from a bit of a macro job-wide. We have to identify what actually happened. We have to look at that from a process standpoint and say, did the Massachusetts State Police have the proper training, accountability, insights, and controls across?
So did they? Do you think they did? And he mentioned training. So just wait, because we're going to get more into what he's going to do and what he's going to change. Did they have the proper mechanisms in place and trainings in place to do the job correctly? And if I was deposing this guy, I'd say, what's your answer to that? Did they? Did they have it in place? And why? We know funding was not a problem. Just ask Morrissey. He could have got whatever funding they needed, right? I know it's not all the same, but those are the questions that I would love to ask him after hearing this interview, because he can wiggle and dance and not really go deep into a lot of these answers. But if he's in his deposition, okay, you went back, you looked, what did you find? What's your answer? Almost turn him into your expert.
The board to ensure that doesn't happen, to ensure that when our troopers are involved in an investigation, particularly a major investigation, a complex a death investigation, we and this comes from I spent 17 years investigating death investigations. Our mission needs to be laser focused on finding the truth. Period. Hard stop.
I don't know if he misspoke or if he said he spent 17 years investigating death investigations, meaning investigating the officers, investigating the investigators. If he did do that and has that many years of experience doing that, I would love it. I think he is the perfect guy for the job. But I don't know if he just meant to say actually doing the death investigation itself.
That's what the mission of a detective is to uncover the truth, regardless of what direction that it takes you, and to follow the facts and evidence of your investigation and to do so.
Do you think they did that in this case, sir? Do you think they did that in Karen Reed's case? They just went to uncover the truth regardless of where it took them. Do you think that's what happened?
So with integrity, with confidentiality, and with the professionalism that we expect. So to your point, all those issues that factored into that decision, just like any other investigation I'd like to offer, we actively have been and will continue to take back to our team, digest the issues, learn from them, and then absolutely we have the responsibility to put measures in place so that we can report back to the public and say, we've learned from that, we've gotten better, we've improved, and now we're moving forward.
So in that.
All right. So they're going to talk about what they've done to improve, but he said, we want to go back and look, see what measures we can put into place and then go forward and implement them in order to gain the public trust. So when you talk about that, and he's about to mention some of the things that they put in place. So you may think this is a great piece of evidence. You say maybe this would be better to explain once he talks about some of what they've implemented. I'll hold that legal thought.
Case in particular is the takeaway that perhaps Proctor's mission was not just to find the truth?
Well, I think that the investigation itself, keep in mind, took place before I got it. So I was not here when the investigation.
That Homer Simpson meme where he's like going back into the bushes. He's like, just remember, I'm going to distance myself from this investigation that happened before I was here.
What took place. So I can't, nor will I speak to the mission and how it was conveyed during the investigation portion of that.
But you just said you were going to investigate the investigation. That was your specialty. I thought you could look into the investigation.
What I can say is that in my review of the after action reports and of the issues that were raised, I reviewed through the internal affairs process. Certainly, we identified areas where I think being specific to our core mission, a reminder to our core mission, is appropriate here. The actual why do we have troopers assigned to these cases? Why are we there? Well, we're there to uncover the truth, and I believe that it's our job and in my job, sitting in this role currently as the colonel, to make sure that we are being loud and clear with the why and what we expect from our troopers. And that why absolutely is, as far as investigations goes, is aligned with the core mission of uncovering the truth. As important as the why right now with MSP is the how and the what. How are you going to do it? And what are you going to do specifically? Like talking about mission focused sounds great, but if you do it the wrong way, it all falls apart. Wherever it takes you. So we've taken some steps towards that. So here we go. These are the steps that they've taken to try and improve since he's been there, which has been a while, right? Between trial 1 and trial 2. So he didn't just start yesterday. So he's already taken some steps to put some measures in place to improve the problems that he saw before when he looked into the Karen Reed investigation and others. Allow me to describe one particular step that we've done is we have, if you are an investigator, if you're assigned to an investigation role within the Massachusetts State Police, I look at that and our team looks at that as a as an expertise, as an expert position. And with that comes the expectations that our troopers will be prepared, trained, and will perform as an expert. So to that effect, we've implemented a new in-service program for our specialized units, where just like a doctor has to go or a lawyer has to go for continuing education credits, any trooper that's assigned to a specialized unit will be required to undergo advanced training to keep up with the changing dynamics or the environment, but also be adaptive, but also understand where we can do better. That's part of it. That's part of a really healthy organization. So we just put our troopers who were assigned to investigations, about 500 or so troopers, through that first exercise, through that first training. That's new. And that's not going to stop with one training. That's going to be a continuing process that will occur, certainly as long as I'm here.
Okay. So I'm going to try to be kind. Okay. Because to say that like some continuing education is this humongous step you just took forward to make your law enforcement officer so much better is like, yikes. The fact that you didn't have that first is embarrassing. And secondly, we all know how some continuing education goes. I can go to one conference and half of it can be great, half of it can be completely worthless. So what is it really worth at the end of the day? I think continuing education is important, but if that's the big step you wanted to highlight and make sure you said in this big interview, I'm not super excited about that, but let's just run with that for now, because that's one of the remedial measures that he says he has taken and put into place. So you would think a lawyer would be able to say, so you're saying, so we want to argue to the jury, this continuing education was necessary. They didn't have it before, therefore their negligence. And we just proved it because you put in this remedial measure, you changed it, you showed that they need that, they didn't have before. So boom, there's negligence. Well, in most jurisdictions, you cannot make that argument. You cannot take what we call post-remedial measures, meaning things that they do subsequently after the issue that they correct it. And a big one is, let's say, a ramp or a stairwell that didn't have a railing. The fact that they put a railing on after somebody plummeted to their death, you can't use that against them and say, haha, you put a railing on, you admitted what you did was wrong. And the reason for that makes sense. Why? We want people to put the railings on. We want MSP to do continuing education. And as bad as it sounds, most companies and most troopers in his position wouldn't put any remedial measures in place if they could be used against you. So in a public policy to make things safer and better, we allow people to correct their mistakes, even if lawsuits are going on, and it not be used against them. Okay. So hopefully you're tracking with me there. Now, while that can't be used against him necessarily, if they try to make some argument that it was impossible to implement some of the things he's saying he wants to implement now, and you can then point to the post-remedial measure. So if Proctor says, oh, there was no training in place, it was impossible for us, we were too busy, we didn't have the resources, whatever. If he says something like that it was impossible to put some of these remedial measures in place that now are in place, then you can use it. Then you can say, well, isn't it true that the new head of the MSP put in the continuing education? And you have to continually do that. So that's why every single thing he says as a remedial measure, number one, I'm going to highlight it as a flaw in the past. I might not bring it up and say that they've changed it, but I'm going to say, you looked and you noticed they didn't have a lot of things, right? And here are some of the things that they didn't have. I'm not going to say that you've implemented, but I'm going to say they didn't have them in the past to show that they were negligent. The jury doesn't get to hear the second part that you agree that's why you implemented them, but they still get to hear the problem. And then if anybody tries to argue you couldn't have done it or it was impossible, I'm going to bring it up again. And that's why it's important to hear what's Proctor going to say. Anytime Proctor speaks, whether it's on the stand, whether it's an interview, any of these MSP officers, what are they going to say? And how is it going to be used in Karen Reed's case? Because how are we actually going to get to the truth and the transparency about what actually happened? What was going on? There were way too many things that just were impossible to be mistakes, and too many things that were like, what? It was in this folder and nobody knew about it. His supervisors didn't care. The DA's office didn't push more for this. The more we learn, the more we hear it. Just life is not normal. The system of justice did not go forward the way that it should in Massachusetts. That's what's really important about the indications he's giving in this interview and comparing it with what everybody is saying everywhere else.
A couple more questions on this particular topic. The few other officers, troopers associated with that investigation were...
Right. And these are the types of questions, Maximum, that you could ask. Let's talk about chain of custody. You guys ever have any continuing education on that? Oh, it'd be duplicative. Why would I write it down? Why would I take a note when I got back? It's like, well, sir, you go to this class every year. Don't they teach you this and this? That's why it's important. That's why education is important, because there were so many simple, like day one things that they screwed up. Today I went shopping and talk is still cheap. Lil Wayne, the poet, Lil Wayne. Will you try to get him on your show? I'm not local to Massachusetts. I would talk to this guy. Sure, I'd have questions for him. Fine. I can understand why he wouldn't want to come on my show because I'd probably press into areas that there's a couple things he's going to say I can't talk about that right now because there's an open investigation, which is fine. I think it'd be cool if some of the local people were really able to talk to him about, what the pulse is like there. I would talk to him. I'd be happy to and do my part talking to him. I just think he's saying he wants to be engaged with the people that he is going to be connected to and protecting.
Or faced some minor discipline, and most of them were moved out of the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office. Was that your call or was that the DA's call? And do you feel at this point like there's been sufficient accountability for that case?
Ultimately, the transfer of troopers lies with me.
Okay.
Ultimately, our policies, so transfers of troopers at the end of the day comes down and under statute is under the authority of the superintendent.
So we have now, he has taken credit for firing Proctor, the transfer of troopers, which has happened to multiple troopers, and he mentioned healthy retirements. So to me, and I understand people getting mad about them being transferred and not fired and then being able to retire and get a pension and not get fired. I completely agree. I completely understand with you guys that are frustrated with that. If you find something wrong with that officer, you should fire him. You shouldn't just pay him forever. You shouldn't take tax dollars for them forever. You shouldn't transfer him somewhere else. It's like when the Catholic priest would end up getting found out for have done something horrible to a child and they transfer him somewhere else. It's like, no. That doesn't fix the problem. That just makes it somebody else's problem. So I totally get that. But from his perspective, he's trying to find ways to make change. And maybe if we squint, it can look like a step in the right direction.
Transferring of the colonels ultimately is my decision.
Mm-hmm.
That said, moving certain troopers that were involved in that investigation, it ultimately is my decision, and I believe it's the right decision. But that decision was collaborative. That was felt across multiple levels that we needed to make some changes. So it wasn't when I got here and started assessing some personnel decisions, putting new commanders, new supervisors in key positions, particularly in Norfolk County, I firmly believe was a decision in the best interest of the Commonwealth, of the citizens of Norfolk County, and the Mass State Police, and I wasn't alone in that decision.
So just based on having covered both of these trials, it's pretty clear that state police, based on their investigation, as well as prosecutors in this case, believes that Karen Reed was responsible for John O'Keefe's death. Do you feel as though state police's performance in that investigation contributed to the lack of conviction at the end of the day?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think anytime when you have
So he agrees that the lack of conviction is because of the police performance. Immediately in my head, and we're not going to go down this road, that's like ding, ding, ding. John O'Keefe's family could potentially have claims against law enforcement as well for how they handled this case. I've always kind of thought that in the back of my head, and he's just adding more fuel to that fire.
A charge that's brought to a defendant, and as the lead investigative agency in this case, which was the Mass State Police, has, and you have a case where the jury finds that there's not probable cause to convict, then absolutely the investigative body has to look through that and to say, why did we not give the jurors enough information? Did our mechanisms that we had in play to report that information, was our investigation lacking? So I think we, the state police, have to look in the mirror and say, what could we have done better? What are areas? And I think in this case, this case obviously was very publicized, so we don't have to look far to really look through that, and then to be focused on moving forward and say, we need to put, what can we have done? But I would just add to that, and to say that the way the state police is operating right now, it's not limited to one particular case.
Right.
Every single event, the way that our management structure is operating right now, we are in a posture right now where everything we do, whether it's a motor vehicle crash investigation, whether it's a security incident or a security event like the Boston fireworks show where we had a huge security presence, or it's a marathon event, or it's any event, we have a management style in place right now in the state police that we are after actioning what we do with the notion that we can do better. So it's that sense of humility that we have to take to look ourselves in the eye across the board and say, where can we improve? If we're doing things great, that's great. And we are doing things great, and we'll enhance those areas and we'll replicate them. But it's incumbent upon us to ensure, and we have done that, and we will continue to do that, whether it's the trial in Norfolk County or really all of our operations.
So do you feel confident saying now that if a situation like the death of John O'Keefe, something similar were to happen tomorrow, that it would be handled differently by troopers?
I have every bit of confidence sitting here today that if we have an investigation that we're called to today, regardless of the scope, regardless of the complexity, that we have a team of Massachusetts State Police in play. We have the managerial controls in play to ensure that our investigations right now are being done to excellent standards right now.
So he didn't answer the question. The question was, would it be done differently than John O'Keefe's death investigation? He said it would be done excellent. So I think I can answer that for him, that yes, that would be different, but I would have liked to hear him say it. Because again, that's something else I would have used in a depot.
I want to ask you about Sandra Birchmore as well. I know this was also before your time, but it is a case that's now ongoing at the federal level. And it seems as though there was a local investigation, a state police investigation, then ultimately nothing came of that until the feds got involved. And now, local cop is in jail. Where and why did state police drop the ball there? And is that part of what you're looking into in your role?
Certainly it is. And that investigation certainly is ongoing right now. So I can't comment specifically on that investigation specifically. That said, I think there's no, when it comes to us working with our federal partners, to speak to this a little bit more broadly, we welcome another agency coming in and looking.
That sounds like a breath of fresh air. They welcome the feds coming in. They're not afraid of the feds. They want to work with the feds. So everybody that said it was so strange when we would talk about like it's weird, usually state attorney's office or district attorney's office and the U.S. attorney's office, they are a team. They're willing to work together. We've seen all these investigations. I think Mangione and Koberger, where federal law enforcement worked with state agencies and they work together. They're supposed to be on a team, right? This shouldn't be a foreign concept, even though it feels that way when the head of the Massachusetts State Police now says, we want to welcome them and work with them. That's not the feeling I got through the Karen Reed process or the Sandra Birchmore process. And we know why. We know why. I thought it was extremely difficult to bring suit against a police force for investigation mishaps. Oh, it is. Very difficult. But this is one of those cases. I firmly believe this is one of those cases, especially with all the momentum it has.
Yeah, investigation. I think there's a little bit of misinformation out there that there is on whether it's that particular case or others. We welcome that. And if another entity, another law enforcement partner, in this case, the federal authorities come in and say, hey, we want to look at this case. We want to engage. We want to work through the evidence. We have the shared common goal.
Okay.
And on this case, as well as
all of this is perfect. Like if I'm doing the 1983 action, I'm saying you have a common goal, right? So what about when law enforcement hired experts? When federal law enforcement hired experts, what do you think the MSP should have done with those experts? What do you think the MSP should have come around the table and said, can we really prove this? Do we have enough evidence? What should they have done? What should they have recommended to prosecutors about how this investigation maybe is a little bit different now that we have the federal agents who have brought in their experts and this is what they came up with. And it's very different than what some troopers came up with. Let's sit down. Let's get our heads together. Let's welcome the discussion. These are all questions that he is providing a background for that I would dive into completely in a deposition. He's opening the door here, and I think he's an absolutely relevant witness since he was the head of the MSP during the second trial.
The other areas where we work, there's no space between us. We want the same thing. I've communicated that directly with our federal partners, that anything we can do from the Mass State Police on any investigation to support a thorough investigation. And there are times when one department comes in and helps another department realize success. And there's times when another department, that's law enforcement. And that's why it is so critical that we work well with our partners. So we support any of their efforts to do. We are continuing to support that investigation in any means necessary.
So the way the public might perceive the FBI coming in as a failure of state police, you don't see it that way.
I can understand that there's perceptions out there. That specific, again, I won't speak to that specific investigation, or perhaps when the time comes, when it's appropriate to, I'd be happy to. But as far as that specific investigation, because it's an ongoing investigation, I can't speak to that.
Okay. I know we have spoken a little bit about this, but Enrique Delgado Garcia, he was in training. He passed away during his state police training. Do you have an update?
So this is another case that I just barely heard about, but just again, obviously in my head, ding, 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 lawsuits coming from his family, right? Unless he did something intentionally or there was drugs or something like that, or he disobeyed a direct order. Like this is horrible for them, this type of stuff. This guy passed away during his state police training.
Update on the status of the internal investigation here?
So to be clear, when we say an internal investigation, that there is no internal investigation regarding the death of Trooper Enrique Delgado Garcia.
Okay.
That investigation has been assigned
It's
to
now an external
it's an
investigation.
external investigation. So I just want to be
Right.
clear, and that investigation is being done by an independent prosecutor who was assigned. That decision was made before I got here, and obviously that decision I believe is wholeheartedly appropriate. And by design, the Massachusetts State Police is walled off from that investigation. So we don't have an investigation into his death. I'm aware that there's an investigation ongoing. We're completely cooperating with that investigation, and we, like so many others, the community, the family, we want the same answer. We are eager to hear the results of the investigation, and we are eager to understand the circumstances when it's appropriate. And I also understand that this is taking a considerable amount of time. I can't speak to that because I'm not part of that investigation, but I can say, as an investigator broadly, I know that we want to get it right. We want to learn from it. We want to, and I'll defer to the independent prosecutor on his investigation and the timing thereof. But when the appropriate time comes, we look forward to learning about the investigation, understanding what happened, and our resolve to do everything in our power to avoid any of our trainees being hurt or dying in a training environment. Our resolve and our commitment to ensure that we do everything in our power to not have that again is never ending.
Is there anything that you have considered doing for transparency's sake? I know that these training exercises are videoed, either releasing videos from prior training exercises or from his training exercise. Have you considered any of that just to kind of keep the public informed?
I since I've been here, I have committed to being as transparent, and I think that my efforts and my actions since I've been here show that under my administration here with the state police, and since I've been here, we are going to continue to be as transparent as possible. That said, it's not under my purview. I do not have the authority to be transparent regarding that specific incident. That's again under the direction.
So that case is out of your hands at the moment.
Yeah. So I again will defer to that. Now, there have been now. Speaking of transparency, at the academy though, we are currently doing something that's never been done before. That's been unprecedented. We currently have an outside assessors, a team that we hire, independent of what the investigation. That investigation is separate. But what we have been able to do, and this is something that's come from within. But I would also say it was also ordered by Governor Healy. On the day that I got sworn in, I had a discussion with Governor Healy, and she ordered an external review of our state police academy. So while the separate investigation's been ongoing,
So again, in that trooper's case that passed away during the training, I want that report. Give me that report. Tell me what they said, the external review of your training, so I can see where all the problems are. So they're doing this stuff that they don't necessarily have to. Yes, if some of it's public facing to look good, fine. But they have to realize, they have to know this is going to all become part of the civil lawsuits. So they are opening themselves up with some of this transparency and some of this trying to improve and get better. Some of it will be held against you. And guess what? That's how it has to be. Because people's lives were literally lost when we talk about this trooper, when we talk about Birchmore, when we talk about John O'Keefe. Like, people's lives were lost, and your work is too important to just say, oops, we're going to do better. Trust us. It's just how it is.
We, meaning separate from that investigation, contracted with the International Association of Chiefs of Police. And they have been on site, open doors, watching, learning, having access unfettered to our training, to our curriculum, to how we're doing it. And so I would say from a transparency standpoint, we have been doing things. We have been taking action that is unprecedented. So what's occurring right now in our current class is not happening behind some wall of silence or some closed doors. We have external folks from all over the country, experts in policing, other police departments on site, part of the training process right now. And at some point soon, they'll do a complete report, and I will look forward to reviewing that report.
And the public will eventually get to learn the results.
Absolutely. I look forward to sitting down. If you allow me.
And they're going to publicly reveal the report. So it ain't just the lawyers that are going to get it. The public's going to get it as well.
We'll talk through what those recommendations are, and where appropriate, we will adopt those recommendations.
Before I get to my final topic, which is your excellence initiative, I do need to go backwards with one question I missed, because I know that I think part of the reason we're still here, right? This trial in Norfolk County ended now months ago. Part of the reason we're still here is because there's a lot of people who can't let it go, who still feel really, really strongly about it. And they're going to want to know, given that, is the investigation into the death of John O'Keefe now closed?
So that case, as it stands, I have to defer to the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office for the status of the investigation. That is ultimately their decision to comment on it. So I will respect that.
So my thought when he said that was, law enforcement doesn't usually ask prosecutors before they start an investigation, right? They see, do they have enough? Do they want to go forward? Do they want to make an arrest? Do they have probable cause? Things like that, right? So law enforcement usually is the one in charge of investigations. But to give him some grace, if Norfolk County DA said, we are never prosecuting anybody else ever, so don't waste your time and resources investigating, I can understand why he's saying it's, their call. Additionally, as much as we hate the outcome of that, especially for the O'Keefes, not knowing and having, no justice and not getting a conviction for what happened to John O'Keefe, I understand from a prosecutorial perspective why you can't really prosecute anybody else, because you've already put all your eggs in the Karen Reed basket. You've already put so much evidence trying to point at Karen Reed that anybody else you might indict is going to point the finger at Karen Reed for reasonable doubt. And that creates a very difficult situation for you ever to be able to prosecute anybody. Oh, and the investigation still sucks. So even if you want to point the finger at somebody else, how would you prove it? Now, if they had a smoking gun, if they had, a group of people that came out and said, yeah, we all lied, it was really this guy, and we all were sitting there to protect him, then sure, you could still prosecute if you want to, but it is extremely difficult to get to that position to where you think you could actually successfully prosecute anybody else in the death of John O'Keefe. So I do think he kind of punted the question a little bit, but I do understand the difficulties at play, again, because of how horrible the investigation is and because of the first and second failed prosecution of Karen Reed.
That said, the Massachusetts State Police is what any new information, any information that is out there that can come into the Massachusetts State Police, whether it's on this case or any case, we welcome. And our posture is and always will be, we will respond accordingly to appropriate information in our seek for the truth.
Okay. Let's get into your excellence initiative. This was announced relatively.
He puts too many qualifiers on what he says. I'm listening to this a second time now, as opposed to just saying we're going to do X, Y, and Z. He's like, if it's legitimate, if it's appropriate. Who determines legitimacy and appropriateness? If it's just you every time, now it's still just, trust me, bro, still. So some of that. Were the federal documents handed over to the MSP? It's a good question. I don't know, but I know with absolute certainty, Trooper Paul had to know what ARCA was saying. They had to discuss that with him in discussing his reconstruction and what he think happened versus what they think happened. So they definitely knew of it. I don't know if they had everything, but again, that's between them and the Norfolk DA's office. I'm curious, with the 1983 lawsuit, will Morrissey's emails come into play? My guess would be absolutely yes, and probably even more. Some of the ones that were redacted, I would guess would come in. But yeah, the way Morrissey would ask for, expert reports that would be helpful to them, or how much we're going to pay them, or how she's got the funds for a defense, or are you looking at this case differently? Did you really have to work it up or do something different, or, make sure to create something out of nothing? I think those emails are absolutely going to be part of the case.
Recently. And I want to read this one line from the press release that you put out when you announced it. It says, the goal, more or less, is that this excellence initiative underscores the department's unwavering commitment to upholding its values of integrity and professionalism, ensuring operational excellence and accountability, fostering community engagement, and public trust. What prompted this? Was this an idea before you started here? Did this come to you as you kind of observed what was going on with state police? How did this come about?
This is a direct reflection of the way that we're doing business moving forward. We need to come, first of all, do an assessment.
This is the PR statement. So I'm gonna just let him roll with it here. We'll talk about it after, but this is obviously kind of the butt kissing, where excellence is the only thing that we will accept here, and we're gonna keep fighting until we get excellence. So everybody hit the like button if you thought this video was excellent, as we listen to him kind of really give his spiel as to what's coming to Massachusetts. And I would say, if you live there, hold him to this. Hold him to this. Clip this down. If you see it not living up to this standard, say, bro, what's up with this? This is what you promised us.
We need to look objectively across the board, understand where we're doing well, where we're operating well. But the way that we are approaching this is we are going to move forward with a plan. And that plan is going to be inclusive, not just from the state police. We are not sitting at our table as troopers and as with a command staff of folks wearing the uniform and saying, hey, what are we doing? Just the opposite. We've opened up that conversation. We've increased our community engagement efforts, which you'll see as part of that excellence initiative. We've opened up the door. I would also highlight the fact that one of the first things we did was we created a new position within the command staff of the Mass State Police. So we have a new title, a position of Chief Community Engagement Officer, who is a non-sworn member of our department, who comes in without prior law enforcement experience. And that role, very specifically, is to bring a voice, bring a difference of opinion to our table as we move forward. So these are some things that have happened already since we've been here. But the excellence initiative, after my initial assessment, we said, well, we are going to come up with our top priorities. And that's what that is. And out of my commitment to being transparent to the troopers and to the communities, I felt it was appropriate to put it out there. and to put it out there in a meaningful way and say, this is where we're at. This is not there's no victory lap here, just the opposite. This is what we've come up with right now. This is what we are working on. And this is our intention to move forward based on, and it's also, I think if the public should know, is what is this, is the state police doing anything? Is the state police listening? Does the state police understand that moment? And at a high level, what that reflects is an eagerness for the Mass State Police to run towards this conversation. We're not running away from the tough questions. And that's not just me saying that. That's the entire department. That's been my experience with this department, that the women and men of this department recognize the moment and say, we are proud troopers. We understand that there's been issues. We understand it. And we're going to run towards it. We're going to work with the community, shoulder to shoulder. And that excellence initiative provides simply a platform where we can be open with our first steps. And I look for feedback. That's why I'm sitting down here today.
I am curious about the trooper sentiment. Have you received pushback at all? I mean, it can't be easy to have thousands of troopers who feel like the entire department is under a microscope and under constant criticism, and then have to go through this initiative to kind of regain public trust. Have you gotten pushback on that from the troopers at all?
I have not gotten pushback, which is a testament, I think, to the caliber of the women and men that wear this uniform. Mm-hmm. That said, is it uncomfortable? Absolutely. Absolutely. No one, no trooper, no police officer, no public servant, no professional wants to be in a moment where we have to sort of look ourselves in the eye and say, hey, what are we doing? We need to change. Mm-hmm. We need to look ourselves in the eye and say, now that said, it's not.
We need to change. He admits it. We need to change. There's no doubt. He admits there's a problem, which obvious. I mean, a lot of people are like, duh, but I've seen people sit in his chair and do interviews like this and not admit that they need to change and they have a problem. It's absolutely true. Oof. I can't wait to see how the civil case develops.
Wholehearted change. This department, by and large, is operating at an exceptional level. And I've been so impressed every day by this department. But that said, I don't think any organization, I don't think any professional wants to have even an outside colonel. If I could talk to that, I recognize that in this moment, very respectfully, that as an outside colonel, what does that mean? What does that mean for the department? I frankly didn't know what level of reception I would get. I know I've been a state trooper for most of my career. I'm very proud, and I've always felt of strong connections to the Mass State Police and respect. But that said, until you're here, you don't understand. And but once I got here, it was loud and clear that the troopers welcomed this moment and said,
I mean, the decision to bring in somebody outside, you have to respect how big of a deal that must be. You have all these state troopers that have been here for all these years, coming up the ranks, learning from each other. You would think they could promote within. So the fact that they went outside and got this guy definitely makes a difference.
Let's go. Let's understand. No trooper likes to have this agency going through what it went through over the last several years. And the rank and file, right up to the top command staff and the seasoned troopers, 100% in my experience, have supported what we are doing, saying, but let's be thoughtful too. Let's be strategic. And that's what we are trying to do. We are trying.
But let's be thoughtful too and be strategic. Those are the things I would like to pin in on a little more. What did you mean by that?
To do it the right way. It's going to take time. I understand that. This is not a Band-Aid. There is no Band-Aid. We are going to work through this together, and it will take time. And I know that the troopers have the resolve to stay with this conversation. We'll go through ups and downs, but we'll do it together. And I just want the community to know that we take their expectations profoundly. The people of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts expect and deserve that their Mass State Police are the best in the business, are out there achieving and executing the job of policing to the highest standards. And they should expect that. And we welcome that. And I think that expectation has been built up for over 100 years, so high that when there's a downturn, the public says, that's not the state police. And that's why we are all in this moment. And we say, that's not the state police we know. What happened? Why are we here? So this is a plan. This is a plan for us, the Mass State Police, not just me sitting here as the colonel, but through this department. We are ready, eager, and willing to move forward.
And you plan to stick around for a while?
I do. Okay. I'm here as long as it takes. And of course, I serve at the will of the governor, but I'm here as long as it takes. In order for us to work through this, this is going to take time, and it's going to be collaborative.
Okay. So, I give everybody this free question at the end. Is there anything I didn't ask you that I should have that you want to make sure you say?
I appreciate the opportunity. I just believe that at the end of the day, the Mass State Police wants to and understands that we need to connect with our community. We need to work together. I think that collectively there's a lot of noise that's out there. And although there's real issues, I think collectively, I mentioned earlier, focus on some of our common areas. To the extent we can, let's focus on the real issues and let's work together, because the Mass State Police, I believe, wants exactly the same thing that the Commonwealth wants, which is a statewide police force that's operating to the highest standards and is aligned with the best practices. And that is what the Massachusetts State Police, in my opinion, has been known for for most of its history. And I think we all want the same thing. So I look forward to engaging with the community. I'll be out there. Our troopers will be out there. And I look forward to the community members engaging with us.
And there it is. The community members engaging with him, engaging with the community. That's what he is soliciting. What do you think of Welcher using Trooper Paul's work and testifying as though it was his own? Also, the dates on the reports. Yeah, I saw some of that. My biggest, I don't even care if he looked at his reports and whatever. My biggest issue with that is Karen Reed's defense team not being able to cross him on Trooper Paul's report and work and what he did in connection with that. That was my biggest, that didn't make sense at the time. It makes even less sense now looking at the emails and looking back in all that. It's just, that was frustrating at the time. So many things that we thought were annoying and wrong and backwards in the trial, turns out we were absolutely right about. I hope this guy, I'll say the same thing I said when Hank Brennan came on board, which didn't end up taking place, but I hope this guy means what he says. I hope he does fight for truth and transparency. I hope he does fight to correct the wrongs that have already happened, take accountability, admit the mistakes that were made, help the poor souls and lives that were lost because of the horrible actions of MSP, and move this forward in a good direction. Nancy, do police forces have insurance or a separate fund for when they are sued? Surely it can't come out of their budget. So this is really jurisdiction dependent. Different states, different cities, different counties have all different areas they can find or get money. Some do have insurance policies. Some jurisdictions have sovereign immunity caps that you have to fight through and get through different ways. So this is not a one size fits all type of deal. All right. That's all we got. If you guys are going to head over to the Miles King hearing, let me know if you want me to break it down, if you have any questions. I don't know if Proctor or Lally or both will testify. I hope they do. I'll check it out when I have some time tonight, and maybe we'll talk about it tomorrow. You guys let me know if you want to. But that's all we got. Please take a second and hit that like button if you guys have not already, and subscribe to our page. Till next time, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, X, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast featuring new episodes every week. And if you have a case that you want to personally talk to us about in your life, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, truck accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, the Lawyer You Know.